Anup Ghosh. I love talking. I love talking to Anup. I love talking to entrepreneurs that are excited and have created a platform, created tools, created services that not only help managed service providers, but help small to medium-sized businesses. I love talking to them. Anup is part of ThreatMate is the name of his company. He's part of the ConnectWise PitchIT competition or incubator cohort this year. Great conversation. I opened the conversation with drawing parallels with golf and cybersecurity. He's an avid golfer. I like to play a little bit. I wonder what you think some of the parallels were brought up. Have to be dynamic, never hit the same shot twice, have to practice well, have to have good tools, etc. But we dig into a great conversation. He also likes sailing and just a well-rounded, smart person. He worked at DARPA for a long time. I'm not sure if you're familiar with DARPA. It's a federal agency responsible for so many technologies today, the World Wide Web and GPS, etc. But just a great conversation. He also sold a company that's another type of security, endpoint security, back in 2017. But just a great conversation with Anup. I look forward to getting to know him more, playing a little golf with him, and you're going to love this conversation. Thanks for listening. Hi, I'm Joey Pinz. People ask me, how did I lose 130 pounds? The quick answer is always discipline. I started my business, wasn't paying attention to my health, was eating too much, drinking too much sweets. My daughter was born. Next thing I know, I'm pre-diabetic, I have hypertension. I knew something had to change. Discipline. I, like many of you, have faced many challenges in your career, in your family, in your life, in your faith. How did you attack them? How did you approach them? How did you solve them, hopefully? It all had to have some degree of discipline. I'm also asked, how did you found and start a tech business that lasted over 25 years? Discipline. I was committed to it, enjoyed technology, didn't enjoy some aspects of it, but knew it was necessary. Discipline. Our podcast mission, how do we use discipline to better ourselves and society? Join me, please, as I talk to interesting people and discuss how they use discipline in their family and their passion and their careers and how it helped them. Our podcast vision, growth through learning from others. Joey Pinz Discipline Conversations. It'll be light and serious. Join us, please. Thank you for consideration. So I will be having conversations with a lot of the coaches and the finalists from 2023 and, just kind of talking about them a little bit and their solution in some future podcasts. We want to make kind of an introduction to that as well.
Yes, absolutely. So yeah, like I said, as the years progress, more people are getting involved, and then back to these vendors looking for a way to create a name for themselves with consistency. They need people like you, which is why I'm so thrilled that you're willing to work with me and work with us on this. So you're going to be you've graciously accepted to host these, and I appreciate that. Where you'll interview all our contestants. You're also going to interview last year's head coaches, last year's judges, last year's finalists. So you're doing all that. And I think it's important, for if you're a vendor and you're watching these, take note of this and how you get more involved. Watch the program. Watch what these men and women are all doing with us, because they're doing a lot. That's how you grow your business. If you're an MSP, watch these things. Get to know who people are and then inquire, because you're all looking to have stack alignment and you're all looking for credible and reputable businesses. We're vetting them out for you. We're putting them on display for you. Watch them, ask questions, find out, do your due diligence. Don't wait until IT Nation Connect to see you like at a booth and then buy 5 or 6 different technologies that you don't need.
So 2024 PitchIT, ConnectWise PitchIT. What's new and exciting about it?
Oh my Lord. So for those that have not followed any of this, I took over the PitchIT program 2 years ago, and we've had such great success, with like really great success. And went from, it's become one of the most predominant programs in the space now. Matter of fact, I was doing some research the other day, and about 5 or 6 other pitching things have spun off from mine and from ConnectWise PitchIT with other people that are running it. So it's great to see, because I think it's the thing about PitchIT is it's all about about innovation. It's all about being daring and willing to do things, right? I mean, as an entrepreneur, it's a scary situation. You have to be ignorantly optimistic, and you have to be willing to maybe fail a lot more than you'll succeed, and you have to have very thick skin. But you always have to be innovative and creative. So it's nice to see that this has spun off into other groups that have started doing it, because I think the hardest challenge for most startup vendors is getting their name out there, right? Getting people to know that they exist. And the reality of it is you can't just be there one time. You have to show consistency. You have to be in there for the long haul, for the partners to really be able for you to establish credibility, right? Because there's been plenty of fly-by-night businesses that have came out big and gone in 6 months. And for partners, their whole business is built around these vendors, these products. So they're making lifelong business decisions off of these. So, so it's great, it's exciting, but back to the program itself, it's jumped leaps and bounds. It went from being just a competition where they picked a few people, a few really good product companies to pitch at live at IT Nation Connect, to where we turn into an accelerated incubator program it's a season. It's literally a competitive season now at this point. And went from 5 or 7 or maybe even 10 vendors that are involved until they narrowed down to 3. To 2 years ago was 18. Last year was 26.
Wow.
And we had way more applications than that. That was just the ones that we thought were the best fit. So yeah, we're getting ready, and we're getting ready to put out the press release in a couple of days, because then the application process will start February 1st. So I recommend anybody from around the entire globe to apply. We've had over just last year alone 6 different countries represented, between the U.S., Canada, to Israel, to Australia, to New Zealand, to the U.K. They all involved in this competition.
Talk to you, Anup Ghosh. Thank you so much for your time today. I'm like I said, very excited to talk to you. What parallels can you make with your love of cyber security and golf?
That's a great question. And I know you play golf, and I play golf, and I bet there's a lot there. I bet we can both riff on it, right? So as we know, golf really is a long game, right? And, it is something that I like to tell my son and younger people, is like, hey, it's a life sport, right?
Yeah, sure is.
Get going early. And I think we can both agree that cybersecurity you also need a long sport view. And that's one of the challenges. We oftentimes talk about left of boom versus right of boom. And a lot of folks really are attracted to the right of boom, because boom is where the action is. And that's where you start jumping in, finding the adversary on the network, trying to detect and respond. That's a short game, right? The long game is preparing the network for that adversarial environment. And that's where ThreatMate works. We work left of boom. And I think you need a long view on golf. Another parallel is golf is hard.
Yeah.
Right? Getting your cybersecurity right is hard, and it does take a long view. So I think there are endless parallels. I'm curious what you think.
Well, in golf, I've never had. I think Jack Nicklaus said he's never had the same shot twice, right? So even if the ball's in the same location, it could still have a different lie. There's different weather. It's different time of day. It's different wind conditions. It's the environment changes. So it's dynamic, very much like these threat actors.
That's a really great analogy, right? So that's something I also speak to when it comes to practice. Like, you get these range warriors. For those of you who play golf, you know what I'm talking about. You're hitting off the mat. Boy, it's just going so well. You've got it dialed in, right? Now take that to the course. Yeah. As you said, there's never an identical lie other than the tee box, right? And I think that's true of networks. So for the managed service providers, everyone wants a recipe. I get that. You want to apply the same recipe to all of your clients, but it turns out that every client network is different, right? And every attack surface, which is what we look at, what are the attack surfaces for client networks, is different, right? And so based on those differences, you'll need to take different actions, just like you'll need to use different clubs and swings and flights for different lies. Boy, this is rich. We could keep going here.
Yeah, another analogy I'll make is that, uh, everybody wants to hit these deep drives and look, what's sexy and it's a long ball. But, when you play enough, golf is played at 150 yards in, right? It's the
Absolutely.
short that's gonna lower your score. So
Yeah.
instead of like buying all these expensive tools, you really got to understand what the process is and understand the game a little bit better.
Yeah.
Another analogy. I also recently, they're talking about, the NBA is getting an all influx of these European basketball players, and they're starting
Right.
to look at why they're trained so different. And the thing is over there is that they practice a lot more than they play. Our youth programs here, they're playing too much. They're not practicing enough. And also over there, when they practice, they're practicing shooting on 1 foot or shooting at
Hmm.
not square to the basket because it's simulating the game a little bit more. Whereas here you set up, everything's not a foul shot. You're always popping and stopping when you're shooting, etc. So you got to
Right.
again learn to be more dynamic given those certain circumstances. Again, another analogy that can use in IT. It's going to be a dynamic environment. It's going to be something different going to happen. Maybe it came in through one way, it came in through a particular email. I got something today that looks so much like American Express. It was
Hmm.
unbelievable. I actually marveled over it, and
Hmm.
they're just so good. And there's all these contributions to that, right? So again, yet another analogy that we can relate.
Yeah. I mean, practice like you'll play,
Mm,
and play like you practice, right? And I think for your practice routine, you need different looks, right?
mm,
And we understand the importance of the sweet spot, but do you know how your ball reacts when you hit it off the toe or
mm,
off the heel, right? So the more you understand that complete face of your club and where the ball comes off, the better you are to make adjustments in mid round. And so when it comes to network security, you understand the sweet spot of what a good network looks like. But we all encounter those networks that are different, right? And they've got a different router than what we're used to, right? And they have users with different profiles, right? And so setting up and managing those networks, again, every one of them is unique. So getting that experience, practicing, training, preparing those networks for the inevitable attack is really the job for our managed service provider.
mm,
And, sort of riffing on that a little bit, when we think about all the action that happens right at boom, typically that falls in the purview and domain of MDRs, right? Or managed EDR, like 24/7 SOCs with cybersecurity experts. And for those clients that want it or need it, that's great. Bring in Blackpoint or Huntress or some other MDR to do that. But if you're a managed service provider, the domain of setting up, managing, and configuring that network is your domain, right? And it's essentially your responsibility to make sure that you minimize the attack surface that adversaries can get
mm.
through onto that network, right? And that's really where we come in. We identify those exposures and those holes on those networks, and that helps you as a service provider, as an IT guy, get in front of the adversary, right? Get in front, identify those exposures, block those holes before the adversary gets a chance to do that, and position your clients for success so they can do what they need to do.
Yeah, you got to have a plan. I don't know if this will be the last analogy, but maybe. You talked about practicing on the mat on the range.
Hmm.
Before you hit the ball, you're going to draw this one. You're going to fade it. You're going to hit it low. You're going to hit it high. So
Yeah.
simulate what you need to do. I think they asked Jack Nicklaus. They said, "What club do you use at 100 at 100 yards?" And
It
his
depends.
answer was all of them. So you should be able to hit all your clubs 100. So I mean, with what you have, with
Yeah.
the tools that you have, you should be able to take care of your clients and plan for it. You mentioned left of boom, right of boom. So let's
Right.
talk about that. Boom is when the attack happens,
Yep.
and left of it is what you do before it, and boom is what you do after, or right of it is what you do after.
Right. And if you think about it, that's a good break point as well in terms of responsibilities, right? So if I'm responsible for administering a network, I'm typically setting it up, I'm provisioning, devices. I'm provisioning accounts, right? I'm responsible for patching it, making sure all the software is up to date. I'm configuring those devices, right? So all of that is what is left to boom, right? Before an adversary gets a chance to get on the network, you're setting it up, you're managing it, you're maintaining it. Now, if there's an exposure, what's an exposure, right? The ones that people typically talk about are things like vulnerabilities, that have these CVE assigned letters, right? And the
CVE.
CVE is common vulnerability enumeration, and it's like a number, a label assigned to a software bug, right? So that's in the weeds and in the details, right? But if that's all you're doing, you're missing a lot of other exposures. So as an example, if your client has RDP, which is a remote login protocol, advertised to the internet, that is a huge exposure that actually disqualifies them from cyber insurance.
Huh.
Right? So it may not have a CVE, it may not have a vulnerability, but the fact that you're using an insecure protocol puts that client at risk, right? Same thing with Telnet. Also, we all know what SSL certificates are. Those certificates expire. And when they expire, you're going to lose that encrypted connection, right? That's an exposure. Another one is domain security. Have you set up DMARC and SPF correctly? You talked about the American Express email, right?
Yeah.
If everybody sets up their domain security well, it's really hard to spoof legitimate companies, right? Including your clients and your own. So those are all examples of exposures in addition to software vulnerabilities. And so what we do is we look for all of the exposures, software vulnerabilities, these other exposures, misconfigurations with user accounts, like not having multi-factor authentication set up, also an exposure. All that's left to boom, right? And that gives our audience, the managed service providers, the opportunity to be that cyber hero for their client, so they can actually say, "Hey, I've got your back." With ThreatMate, we give them a score, right? So the score tells you how well are you doing in your threat exposure management, and it also simplifies everything in your client communications back to the client. Like, here's where we found you. Here's what we've done to improve your security. Here's your score now. It really is helpful.
Now, in 2017, Anup, you made an endpoint protection, which would obviously be left of, well,
Right.
It would be right because after you got it, sure.
Right.
What's different about that product and what the security was like in 2017, some 7 years later?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I kind of got my start in cybersecurity with endpoint security. And this was back in 2009. And back in the 2000s, people were using antivirus. Remember Norton antivirus and McAfee?
Sure.
And what we realized, and I spent some time in defense working for DARPA. And what we realized in those days were antivirus could not hold up against nation state level threats. This is really common knowledge, right? Today. Back in those days, they were deploying McAfee and Norton antivirus, Symantec. And so coming out of that defense experience, I started a company called Invincia, and we developed machine learning technologies that could identify malware without having seen it before.
Wow.
That was novel. Up until that point, antivirus only worked on signatures, like the known malware. We can now use traits of malware to predict what future malware would look like and use machine learning to say that piece of code is malicious, right? So that became next generation AV. That's what it's called back in those days. Ultimately, it became known as EDR. And we all know the EDR products today, from CrowdStrike to SentinelOne, now with Huntress and so on, right?
EDR, endpoint detection and response.
Correct. And that's right at boom. So that's kind of where I cut my teeth in security. And yeah, so we sold that company, Invincia, to Sophos in 2017. That technology is now embedded in the Sophos Intercept X product, which
Wow.
maybe some of the people listening to this use. And so, I moved on. I went on to Accenture in managed security services, Fidelis, cybersecurity and network security. With ThreatMate, we're doing something distinctly different.
Hmm.
We're really we're building a platform for managed service providers to help them secure their networks before the bad guys get on the networks. So when you're
Hmm.
an EDR, you're trying to detect that intrusion after the bad guys on the network or after they've dropped code on the network. What we're saying is, hey, if we can close those gaps, those exposures, we can prevent. And the expression, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. It's
Hmm.
far cheaper to secure that network before an intrusion than it is to respond after an intrusion.
Yeah, because before 2017 endpoint security, there really was no left of bloom. It was okay. Now you've been infected. Let's fix it, right? I mean, you and some other tools started looking at it before, which was just. I remember back. I don't know when it was. I think it was just DOS, but I got like the marijuana virus or something, and it kept on saying I'm happy, or I don't know. And then you run some code and it was gone. But it was always after it happened.
Right.
Um,
No, I would say good system design, and this is hard to
mm,
come by. Good system design can prevent intrusions from happening. So,
mm,
for example, a sandbox around a browser is an example of that. So, if
hmm,
you put a browser in a sandbox or a VM on your desktop, you're going to prevent your system from getting infected. That's a good example of
hmm.
preventing an infection, right? And we were some of the first people to come out with browser sandboxes back in the 2012 timeframe. And there's a number of companies doing this now, which I'm excited to see. But it's great that sort of technology is now finding its way into architectures for software.
Mm,
So any software like the one that we're on today that's interacting with the internet has the potential to be compromised. They get
hmm,
compromised through vulnerabilities. And so your approaches are keep that software patched and make, closing the known holes that are there, run it in a sandbox or a VM, or barring that, you get a compromise and now you have to detect the compromise and respond to it. So we
mm.
always like to say left to boom because it reduces the cost and the recovery costs for your clients.
I just saw today, I think it was Wall Street Journal, where there was this one of these new attacks where patches in the browser. You come up to a site and it tells you it needs to patch the browser. People do it and they're getting infected.
Oh yeah,
So you have to be careful about patching as well. It's necessary, but you just have to
right.
be careful.
That's absolutely correct. I mean, they're just taking advantage of the fact that it's like the you need an update to your antivirus. Remember those spear phishing
Oh
campaigns?
yeah,
Like you
right.
say, oh, you go to a website, all of a sudden your browser is looks like it's taken over to scare you, and it says, oh, we detected 45 viruses.
Yeah.
What they're actually doing is running some code in your browser that looks like your machine has been taken over to get you to press a button that then downloads an antivirus to then remove it. That's the actual infection. So it's like social engineering a little bit. It gets users to actually install software, malicious software.
Yeah, and conspiracy, you know, issues aside, I can even remember in the '90s when Norton and McAfee were the only ones out there, and
Mm-hmm.
managed service providers saying, "Well, they're actually making the viruses, so their software is more important." Remember
Oh,
hearing these kinds of things?
there's always conspiracy theories, and we don't suffer from that problem of having to create an adversary. If you think about
Mm,
it, Joe, when I actually wrote a paper in 2014 saying the security landscape is about to undergo a radical transformation because of one thing, and it was ransomware.
Hmm.
And I said, the big difference between security incidents before then and what's to come is money. So before, people would hack for fun and profit, right? Mainly joy
Hmm.
hacking. So it was always like a challenge. Can I break into this network? That's where the term hackers came from. Hackers was not a pejorative.
Right.
Hackers was an individual who was curious, really understood computer networks, and is actually still considered a good term today. When you hack something, you're actually learning about it. Those were the original hackers.
Hmm.
Since then, those techniques have been co-opted by, crime groups like these Eastern European crime groups that then decided to not only break into networks, but also encrypt disk systems and hold networks for a ransom. That changed everything. The amount of
Hmm.
money that comes from ransomware is staggering, right? And so that actually caused rapid acceleration in the development of malware and then the infrastructure used to compromise systems. So it kind of changed the entire game. And of course, today we know that ransomware is the biggest issue facing
Yeah.
most SMBs.
I remember, I want to say in the 90s, it was the Melissa virus, I think. Is a German engineer did it and then came into work and started bragging about it. And then his coworkers turned them in and he went to jail. And I believe that, maybe I have this story wrong, Lou, but I thought like all the big companies pulled money together. And if you turn hackers in, you were getting rewarded. Is that still the case? Do you know?
No, I haven't seen that at
Hmm.
all.
Because
Largely,
it's not joy hacking. It's states now.
yeah, it's sometimes it's states, and you'll never be able to find them.
Right.
Oftentimes, it's crime games
Right.
that are doing it, typically behind the protection of a state actor in Russia, for example, or Eastern Europe, or
North
China, North
Korea.
Korea.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's kind of hard to turn anyone in these days because you never find out their identity.
Hmm.
So I think right now the real emphasis is how do we prevent these attacks from succeeding? Because once they've encrypted your file systems, it's kind of hard to recover from that unless you have a really good backup strategy.
Hmm.
Um, and also discouraging people from paying ransoms because it just keeps it going. But that can be a tough call, especially when you're losing hundreds of thousands of dollars a day because you're down, right?
Yeah.
That's a really tough call to not pay that ransom.
I always felt that DARPA does not get enough credit for some of the technologies it funded. There's so much,
Yeah.
what is the one where I forget. There's a few of them, and they just never get enough credit. What was it like your time there? That must have been pretty cool.
It was one of the most unique experiences I had, and I think anyone will have it.
Hmm.
I agree with you. We used to talk about DARPA inside. You know, DARPA funded some of the original development of integrated circuits. Uh,
Hmm.
Obviously, people know that the internet,
That's right.
the predecessor was ARPANET, right?
Right.
Um, so it turns out Al Gore didn't invent the internet. It was DARPA.
Ah.
Also, GPS came
Yeah,
out
that
of
was on
DARPA.
GPS.
One of the
Yes.
most interesting things that I did when I was at DARPA, outside of my particular programs, was autonomous vehicles. So
Hmm.
this was in the early 2000s, and there was they call it the Grand Challenge, and we basically raced autonomous vehicles through the desert outside of Las Vegas.
Wow.
Um, and at the time, that technology didn't exist, but was developed as part of a grand challenge. And ultimately, that technology made its way into uh, what we're seeing today in the automobiles and self driving, right? So that was super cool. I also had a chance to work on classified programs back in the early 2000s that really focused on the offensive side of security, which
Wow.
was extremely enlightening on how you defend a network against nation state attacks once you know how they get onto networks.
Hmm. Are UFOs real?
Am I what? I'm sorry.
UFOs, are they real?
You know,
DARPA knows.
I didn't have any access to any of that. So, no idea. I think it'd be, let me put it this way. I would be shocked if we are alone.
Right.
I think the odds of us being alone are infinitesimally small.
Mm.
Have they made it here? Don't know about that.
Mm.
I feel like if they made it here, they would be pretty loud and clear about it, but who knows? I'm not a UFO guy.
Time will tell, nor am I. DARPA, of course, is a federal agency. I don't even know the acronym. Do you know what the acronym stands for?
Yeah,
DARPA?
so Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency. By the
Wow.
way, it was stood up in 1958 by President Eisenhower in response to the Russians getting to space first with Sputnik.
Wow.
We realized all of a sudden we were losing the battle on technology innovation by the Russians getting to space first, and so it became a really big deal. It was supported by Kennedy as well. So most of the innovations in aircraft, fighter planes, and all of that, drones and so on, is coming out of those programs.
It's incredible.
Not really talked about a lot though.
So, when I talk to managed service providers now, Anup, when I talk to them, it's been about the same for the last 3 or 4 years. 3 things that keep them up at night. First is their clients getting attacked.
Yeah.
Next is, cybersecurity. Next is, how they're going to replace their talent if they leave, how they're going to get new talent. And then third, of course, is growth, how they're going to grow. So,
Right.
Knowing that
Yeah.
and having your tool set the way it is it easy to work with managed service providers? Do they get it? There's so many security tools. How do you differentiate yourself? How do you work with them?
Yeah, great questions. And I think 4 or 5 years ago, it would have been difficult to convince managed service providers they need to look into threat exposure management because their clients were not asking for it. So why would they, right? Today, almost every managed service provider we talk to knows they need some form of vulnerability management for their clients because it's required for cyber insurance. So if your clients are selling to another business up market, that other business will require them to have cyber insurance in addition to general liability.
Wow.
Right? Many managed service providers we talk to are now requiring their clients to have cyber insurance because they don't want that downstream liability of, hey, you got compromised. They want insurance to be there to cover that loss instead of them pointing the finger back at the managed service provider. And of course, the managed service provider needs cyber insurance for themselves. So cyber insurance does require vulnerability management of some form, in addition to EDR, in addition to cybersecurity awareness training, in addition to email security, and some of the other things, right? So that's why today, all the managed service providers we talk to understand they need to do vulnerability management. Now, in terms of, what does this mean for growth? I love that question, right? Because to your point, managed service providers really care about 2 things. They care about, how do I grow my business? And then how do I get to more profitable services, right? And selling product, they're not making a lot of margin when they sell product, right? But they can make decent gross margin on offering a service of high value, right? And so what we do is we help managed service providers bring on new clients. And the way that we help them do that is they can use ThreatMate as a prospecting tool. And when they go to a prospect, they can ask them, hey, go ahead and run this package. What we'll do with that is we'll work up. It's kind of like a diagnostic when you go to a garage shop. We work up everything that's on the network, which is helpful for generating proposal. So how many endpoints, servers, routers are you managing, switches, printers, etc. And then, of course, we work up the security exposures as well. And with that report, they can go back to the prospect, and first they can generate a cost proposal because they know how to price it out. Instead of getting it on the phone, you now get a report from our software. And then second, they can say, hey, and by the way, these are the security issues we found, and here's our remediation plan, right? And that's actually, you asked about differentiators. One thing that differentiates ThreatMate is we don't go back and give you a report that says, here are all the problems you've got to do work on. We actually give them solutions, and we use AI and machine learning to generate what we call a mission plan. And so the mission plan very simply tells you what action to take on what devices and when to take them, right? It's all risk ordered. So you don't have to go through literal thousands of issues. We take all those issues and we collapse them into these mission plans.
And how did you arrive at this solution, Anup? Did you have a need yourself?
So coming out of the enterprise space, we knew that vulnerability management was fairly mature, but it suffered from that problem of too many vulnerabilities. And in the enterprise space, you've got a security team that does detection response. You have a vulnerability management team that does nothing but continuously find and manage vulnerabilities. And then you have an IT ops team whose job it is to manage the network. That's what MSPs do, right? So we realized in the SMB space, there's only one team. It's the IT ops team. You don't have these other teams.
Division, yeah.
Yeah, you might outsource the MDR side of it, but it's really one team. So what we said is the opportunity is to take all those vulnerabilities and other security exposures, crunch them through our algorithms, which build out those mission plans, and score everything. And then that way it simplifies the message back to the client. It tells them, here's your score today. Here's where it was last week and the month before. And here's the actions that we're going to take to improve your score. So I think, being able to simplify for this audience the work required and automate much of that homework is key to this user base.
So you're part of the big ConnectWise PitchIT program, which is like this incubator of vendors that come in that have solutions for managed service providers. How do you like it so far? What do you think the benefits are?
It's fantastic, and I say that having experienced other incubators and accelerator programs. Let me go into those differences. So if you're a startup, if you look regionally in your region, you'll find an incubator or accelerator. Oftentimes, maybe unbeknownst to you, they're real estate plays. And so the commercial real estate guys have a lot of open space. So they partner with regional economic development authorities and launch these accelerators or incubators, and some of them are good. But a lot of the motivation there is service providers who are selling services to those companies and commercial real estate. ConnectWise launched PitchIT, and I believe they did so with the best interest of the ecosystem in mind. And so, kind of without necessarily, a financial interest, because they don't take a financial stake in these companies where some of the other, oftentimes the other accelerators and incubators do. They said, look, we're going to help you guys. We're going to help prepare you guys for the managed service provider market. And I think it's a really valuable service. So if you're a managed service provider, which a lot of these PitchIT companies are or were, they're teaching them how do you build a product, how do you do product management, and then of course how do you market and sell to MSPs, not to your clients. It's a different skill set, right? And for us, and we're product guys. We our team consists of seasoned product guys. We know how to build software products, SaaS products. We know how to go to market in the enterprise space. But what PitchIT is doing for us is teaching us how to go to market in the managed service provider space.
Very different.
Very different, right? And really learn community is super important, right? And you have built a community, right? And being able to talk to that community, being a real human and a person is very important. So this has been a wonderful experience, at least for me and for ThreatMate, being part of that PitchIT cohort.
Mm. Yeah, I'm a former MSP, and when I talk to vendors that want to work with MSPs all the time, and the biggest hurdle, Anoop, that a lot of them still can't get over, even working with them for years, is they can't get over the idea that the MSP is their client, not the MSP's clients. The
Right.
MSP's clients are none of their damn business. They
Yep.
can't get over that. They don't get that at all.
Yeah. And,
It's a
and
shame.
in fact, it's a core part of our strategy,
Yeah.
actually, is to say, MSP, you're our customer,
Yes.
right? Not your clients.
Right.
You're our customer, and we take care of you, right? And it actually changes the dynamic. It changes how you go to market. It changes how you build your product.
Yes.
Now, having said that, it is very important to build a platform that works for the MSP's clients. So we really focus on those dashboards and reports. And we have found that to be one of the most, because MSPs don't have the time to write their own interfaces and generate reports. So as much of that we can build and automate so that they can schedule delivery of reports that are meaningful to their clients, the better it is for that MSP. So we are serving the MSP, but that allows them to serve their clients better.
That's the relationship they want. Yeah, and their clients want that too. Their clients don't want to be in the IT business. They want one throat to choke, and that's the MSP. Now,
Right.
you're co-founder and CEO of ThreatMate. How much of your time specifically, Anoop, is leadership versus engineering?
Yeah, I would say nobody puts me in an engineering role for good reason. So we've got an amazing engineering team led by my co-founder and CTO, Stan. And so where I get involved in the product is in product management. And we do product management by committee, which means that I meet with Stan and we go over kind of market requirements is the way I would describe them. And our market requirements come from all of our conversations with both our customers and our prospects. And we basically agree to what the roadmap should look like, and then a schedule. So that's sort of my involvement with product. I don't do any of the engineering myself. I would say as CEO, yes, there's a certain amount of leadership that goes into it, but being a very small startup, most of my time is spent on everything else, right? So all the go-to-market stuff I own, right? All of the financials and reporting I own. So what you find in a startup is most of where you're spending your time is on go-to-market, trying to get your platform out there, trying to meet prospects, and communicating with that audience.
I remember that, I started my MSP in 93, a long time ago, and I started as an engineer. We were
Yep.
also doing programming back then, which is application development. And then it gets to a point where I had to bring on, more technicians and engineers, et cetera. And I remember, I don't know, maybe 10, 15 years after that, we had a big rollout and we were down an engineer, and I said, okay, fellas, I'll come and help. And they all said, that's okay, boss. It's like when your offspring beats you in basketball or something. It's like, oh, all right, okay, I get it. I'm too far from it now, and I've lost. I'm not there. I completely understand. Tell me the difference. You mentioned they do a lot of go-to marketing. What's the difference? Break down go-to marketing by sales and marketing. What's the breakdown of go-to marketing there?
Yeah. So marketing, I think of as preparing the battlefield. That's more of a defense term. So it really is about how do we get both our brand and our value proposition out there and articulated well, right? So most tacticians in marketing spend a lot of their time on digital marketing, right? In our space in particular, we spend a lot of time on live events. And that's what we have found to be super helpful. So, talk to any vendor in the space, there's a lot that goes into event management, right? So being, first of all, deciding which events you go to is important.
Yes, because there's so
Which event,
many.
yeah, there's too many to choose
Yeah,
from.
too many. 250. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's crazy.
And of course, budgets are tight regardless of the size of the organization, right? So at a startup budget, you have this much. You're a large company, you have to make hard choices on where you spend those marketing dollars, right? So how much are you spending on your booth? It's easy to drop 50K on a booth at a trade show. But then the real question is, what am I getting from that exposure, right?
Mm.
What are the leads? How do I handle those leads? How do I follow up on those leads? So that's all the event management stuff, right? And then the follow up is the hard work, right? So being able to follow up on meetings. And by the way, Joe, we find our best sales happens from those relationships that we build
Yeah.
at the conferences. It's not the badge scans. It's not
Right.
necessarily, hey, I scan your badge and I'm going to send you a form email. That's not moving the needle. It moves it a little bit, but it's not really a needle mover. What really moves it are the in-person conversations
Mm.
where you're meeting someone, you're connecting on, the challenges that they face. I mean, this, and being able to say, here's how I can help. Here's how I can help you be more efficient in delivering value to your clients, right? And that's what we find. That's why the live events really work. They work much
Mm.
better than sort of the impersonal digital marketing.
Mm. Yeah, people want to do business with people they like.
That's right. Yep.
That's a noob software. Okay, that's fine then. Okay, all right, I get it. If there's a problem, we're going to let them know. If it's working well, we're going to pat them on the back. I mean, they enjoy that, and that's just not with IT. That's generally wherever you go.
Yeah, and Stan is a technical co-founder, as I mentioned. He's our CTO. But what I found with Stan, he's a very good people person.
Wow.
Um, he can go, at after the sessions, go to the happy hour or bar or late night or poker or what have you, and strike up conversations with anyone. And so he's been amazing at building those relationships, with the people at the conferences, and in turn that builds trust, right?
Mm.
So um, our experience in this space is you've got to go to where the MSPs are gathering. And it's a great place to build those relationships. We've also been involved, speaking of ConnectWise, with the Evolve program.
Wonderful.
It is a wonderful program, and people that go to that. So if you're not involved with Evolve, I certainly recommend checking it out. It's a really healthy balance between the MSPs and the peer groups that happen there, which are just terrific. This is how you learn how to run and drive your MSP business forward. You learn from your peers, right, and the ones that are further ahead of you. And then the supporting cast of vendors, we're there to support those events. Also gives us an opportunity to do boardroom presentations. And what I've found is those are all healthy relationships. Everyone understands the mutual benefit there between the vendors and the MSPs.
Yeah, they certainly do. When I went to my first peer group meeting, so before Evolve, it was called HTG, and
Right.
it's like I've met my tribe. It
Yeah.
was like, I couldn't, you can't relate to anyone as a founder CEO. I mean, you've got employees, you've got vendors, you've got customers, you've got banks, you've got distributors, you've got all these people that are not working against you, but certainly not working with you, it seems at times. And you
Right.
just feel like you're alone on an island. And then you're put in a room with 12 other similar predicament, individuals. And I never looked back, and I was facilitator. I was there 15 years, and
Wow.
I left when I sold the MSP. But yeah, Evolve is great, but any peer group, just get in a peer group, people.
Yep.
It helps. It helps a lot, and I highly recommend it. So I think you know my story. I started
Yep.
the MSP in '93. I was working way too hard, 14, 16-hour days, and got myself up to 340 pounds. I was eating poorly.
Mm-hmm.
pizzas and sodas and etc. And the doctor said to me, if I don't lose the weight, I'm not gonna see my daughter graduate. My daughter was just born, so I'm driving home, punching the steering wheel. What have I done? To this day, by the way, I elbow my friends. I'm like, why didn't you tell me I was psyched? I'm kidding, of course, but
Yeah.
so I spent the next 6-7 months. I lost 130 pounds, and
Amazing.
I kept it off. You can't look at it as a finishing line. Very
Right.
much like security. If we keep on drawing analogies, you protect one network, or you just can't stop there. You've got to keep going. You've got to change your habits. So people always ask me how I did it. They want a quick answer like anything else, but I always say discipline. Right? I created some routine, some control, etc., and I lost weight. I wonder how discipline plays a role in your life, Anup Ghosh.
Yeah, it's a great question. You know, I try and maintain a healthy balance between my home life and my work life.
Mm,
Kind of to your
mm,
point, it's easy to lose that balance.
yeah.
We talked about the conferences. If you're hitting the conference circuit, you're going to spend a lot of time on
Mm,
travel, right?
mm,
For me, home is my sanctuary. And so anytime I come home, it's just like my Zen place. It's my feel good place. Um, I do try and find a golf course, when I am on travel, because travel golf is the best golf. You
yeah,
know,
it's nice.
it's you're always going to find a new course. So I will use golf as a place to retreat, and also clear my head, a good walk, as they say.
Mm, mm,
Um, so I do think you have to have a fair amount of balance.
yeah,
Another thing I do for balance is sail. I'm an avid
I see.
sailor. We live on the water here in the Chesapeake Bay. And so, the best season for us, believe it or not, for sailing is the fall.
Hmm,
Right now, it's a bit too hot to be out there, but
yeah.
enjoy sailing. So between family, golf, sailing, and running a business, I've got a lot of things that both keep me busy and keep me balanced.
Yeah, I don't know how to sail, but I tell you, when I'm on with a friend,
Yeah.
I fall asleep, and it's just so relaxing. It's so comforting, and it's just you breathe in that air, and you mentioned golf too. I know maybe we're dragging this a little too much, but I always, towards the end of my MSP, I started taking salespeople out before I hired them on a round of golf. You could tell a lot. You golf with somebody 18 holes, 4 hours, 3.5 hours, five, whatever it may be. You could tell a lot about a person once you golf with them. Are they a club thrower? Are they, how do they react when they do well? How do they react when they do bad?
Right.
You could tell a lot
Is a
by
5 foot putt a gimme?
See, that's a great question. If they ask that question, you could tell a lot from them as well.
Exactly.
Yeah, so you could really find out. But life work balance, I talk to so many, not just MSPs, but small business owners that just struggle with that, because it's their baby, and I don't know, the American entrepreneurial spirit, whatever excuses there are, but you have to strike that well. What motivates you, Anup?
Winning.
How so?
So, I think a lot of people are motivated by money,
Mm,
right? And all of us in business are trying to earn more money, right? I find the paycheck doesn't do it for me. It just doesn't. Paychecks are great. It gets you through your rent or mortgage and your daily expenses. But I don't wake up in the morning thinking about, oh, I can't wait for my paycheck.
mm,
It just doesn't do it for me, right? So when I think about what motivates me, it's about winning. Like, launching a startup is very difficult, because if you're selling in a space that has demand, there will be competitors. And so
mm.
what I am motivated by is, how can I build a product and get that product to market that's better than the competition,
Mm,
right? And by the way, we all know this. If you build a good product by itself, that's not enough. This
mm,
is not a build it and they will come
mm,
kind of market. You have to be able to articulate what makes your product better, and you have to be able to get it into the hands of people. And there's nothing more I love than beating my competition.
Mm.
Absolutely jazzes me. I love being able to grow a business. There's probably, nothing more fulfilling on a professional level than beating my competition. And we just won a deal yesterday that was very exciting for us because we'd been working on it for a while, and we removed our competition from that account. So that's the long answer to what motivates me. Because it's winning.
So, given that motivation, Anup, how do you measure success?
Uh, in the startup world, and I've been in sort of the venture back startup world for a while now.
Yeah.
Our success comes from year over year, quarter over quarter, year over year growth. And when we can build a business that's repeating, meaning we have a system in place. And by the way, today, where ThreatMate is in its journey, we're still in an early stage startup, is we're doing founder led sales,
Hmm.
right? And you probably remember that when you
I
were
do.
the sales guy, right?
Yes.
A big step is when you bring on outside salespeople into your organization and you can teach them a system, right? And then they can sell it, right? That's where we're getting to right now, right? So we're going to bring on outside salespeople. So it's a new milestone in our journey to sell our
Hmm.
product. And when we get there and it becomes a repeatable sale, and we have our software development team able to hit their releases on time, we have customer support people supporting people, and we start adding and growing clients. Well, when we get to serious growth, we will find, a bigger company that says, I want that rocket ship on my platform, right? And so that's how we obtain success. We obtain success through acquisition, and largely companies acquire other companies to expand their offering, but also to participate in that growth.
Very, very cool. I love. I'm no longer an MSP, but I still bleed and feel like I am. And I love helping managed service providers. They're that last mile. It's tough for them. I also love helping small to medium businesses. I think it's pretty much the same. And what you're doing does both. And thank you so much for your time today. Love talking to, people like yourself that are just so inspirational, got all this energy and got these great ideas and that are helping anybody listening. How can they get in touch with you?
Well, easiest way is just go to our website. If you go to threatmate.com, we've made it super simple to be able to demo the product either in a click through or sign up for a demo. We love demoing our platform because most of the time, as soon as you go through a demo, you're going to realize, hey, I don't necessarily need all these other products because there's so much
Mm.
capability packed in this platform. Is super easy to use. So we would love you to visit threatmate.com, go to the demo, sign up. I would love to have you. And Joe, I would love to meet you in person. So
Me too. Play some golf.
we'll be at IT Nation Connect this fall. We're at a bunch of other shows, and maybe we can swing some clubs together sometime. That'd be awesome.
That'd be really cool. I look forward to it. So ThreatMate, I'll put it in the notes, but ThreatMate, threatmate.com. And your name, of course, on LinkedIn, ANUP, and then your last name, GHOSH. I'll make sure to put it in the show notes. So great talking with you, my friend. I hope to see you soon.
Thanks, Joey Pinz.
Ha!
Love it.
Thanks. Be well. Bye now.
Yeah, take care.
Thank you for listening and or viewing Joey Pin's Discipline Conversations. Please share this episode with one or two of your friends who you think may benefit from the episode. Our website, www.joeypins.com. There you'll find lots of resources and you could join our mailing list. Please follow us on all our social media, Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. Podcast information. The video version of our podcast is on YouTube. Please subscribe. Audio is on all major podcasting platforms. Please follow them. And if you like it, please consider giving 5-star rating. Would really appreciate that. Thank you again for listening or watching Joey Pin's Discipline Conversation.